It is no secret that I have remade a lot of my old artwork over the years, so today I wanted to talk about why I do that and what advice I have for you if you're an artist and you feel like you're not progressing very much in your skill level. One of the reasons why I do recreate these art pieces every now and then is because it gives me the ability to rework a concept without having to come up with a completely new idea every single time that I want to paint. Sometimes this means that I can paint almost the exact same things, but I can play around with the colors more. Sometimes it means that I play around with the composition more. Sometimes it means I just want to see what it looks like if I made it now. That last reason is why I made this ocean painting. The one on the left is from 7 months ago. I did it with acrylic, and the painting on the right was from yesterday, and I made it with gouache. You can tell I improved a lot. I wanted to see what it would look like if I tried this again, and I'm actually very, very proud of how far I've come in just a span of 7 months. When we create a variety of different art pieces with different subjects, it can be very hard to gauge how far that you've come, because at the core, you're comparing apples and oranges. Portraits are not the same as landscapes, and realism is not the same as abstract art. You can't really compare the two. This was a painting that I made in late 2018, and in 2019 I actually got to travel to the state capitol because this was on display at the Texas State Capitol building and the Bob Bullock Museum for a span of around 2 months. To be frank with you, I hated this painting when I made it. I thought that it turned out way different than I wanted, it was really muddy, and I just was not proud of it. But it does hold a special place in my heart because so many other people did like it that it was accepted into the Youth Art of the Month Capitol event, which is why I got to go to Austin. Because of this, I'm going to remake this piece, now, several years later. Let's get into what I could have done better in this previous painting. First off, the colors. I like the colors, I like the pastels, I think it's neat with purple and orange and blue, but they just weren't saturated enough for me. They were kind of washed out because I wasn't applying them in like a very thick layer. So I'm increasing the saturation for that. Another thing is the positioning of the body is a little weird. So I went ahead and used a reference photo this time and fixed the positioning so that you can actually see the collarbones and how the arms kind of cross each other instead of being layered on top of each other the way that the previous painting was. I'm also changing the lighting for this painting. In the original one, I did backlighting for some reason, and it really wasn't intentional, and I think you have to be really intentional with your backlighting, and mine just wasn't, so it looks a little bit off. So now the light is coming from the front left of the picture, and I think that's going to look a lot better. And finally, I am fixing the wording. For the original painting, I just went in freehand, and I think it's very obvious that my handwriting was kind of sloppy and I made mistakes on that, so I am not putting words on the actual painting. I'm going to take the painting and add the words in digitally using Procreate. The original painting was made using watercolors and colored pencil, but the background was made completely separate from the foreground person. I just cut around the foreground person and put them on the background, and I also had a gesso over the background. I am not doing that with this painting. This painting is all in one. The foreground and the background are all one piece of paper. I am not using gesso at all, but to keep kind of within the scheme of things, I am using colored pencil, and then I am using gouache because it's similar to watercolors, but gouache is the medium that I have the most practice in, so I think this is going to yield the best results for this painting. Moving away from the painting aspect of this video, let's get into the commentary and discussion portion about what do you do if you feel like you are not getting any better in your craft. Obviously, I have already discussed comparing your old work to your current work, and that works out really well if you have been painting or drawing or creating the same subjects or using the same palettes over the past little while that you're comparing. But if you're someone like me who used to make really surreal work and now you make landscapes, that's comparing apples and oranges. So I always recommend, like I've done here, recreating old pieces to see how you've improved over the years. I can't compare my landscapes to my surreal portraits, but I can recreate my surreal portraits and I can recreate my landscapes to see how much I've improved or what things that I see that are wrong with those old pieces that I didn't see back then. Now, when it comes to developing an art style or knowing what looks good but not being able to make it, I will leave you with this. I struggled all throughout high school and early college to find my art style. I had been drawing and painting for years, but I just could not see something about my work that made it really specific. I didn't understand how people had specific cartoon styles they drew in, or like different movement styles that they drew in or painted in, and I struggled so hard to force an art style. And that is not how this works in the grand scheme of artwork. You can't really force an art style. You can't really force overnight improvement. It's really acquired over time. And I think that's something that really frustrates people, is how long it actually takes to get good, to get better, to see improvements, because the improvements are not overnight and they are not quick. There was a TED Talk that we watched in high school in one of my art classes, and it was discussing why people don't see improvements even though they can see what's wrong with their own work. So it goes on to discuss that your sense of taste develops a lot quicker than your skills do. That in actuality, it takes an average of 2 years for your skill level to catch up with your sense of taste. So for a long time, you're going to be able to see what is good in your work and what is bad in your work, but you're not necessarily going to be able to communicate that. And there's a certain curve that comes with that 2-year period. Things start off really, really slow in the beginning. And as you're ending that 2-year mark, as you're getting close to that 2-year mark, it goes up drastically, how your skill level goes up to match your taste level. When I first heard that, I thought it was a bunch of baloney. But over the past couple of years, I have seen that principle be very true for my own work. 2 years ago, I could look at a landscape and see, yeah, that's really good. But when I went to paint a landscape, I couldn't tell what was wrong with it. Whereas now, I can see what I want for a landscape. And to some degree, I can replicate that because my skill level has built up to match my taste. I think having friends that can help you critique your own art is a great and wonderful thing, but I don't think that critiques alone are what help build skill over time. I think that time itself is what helps, and comparing your own art to other people's art. Not in the sense of saying, oh, theirs is so much better than me and I'll never make it, but watching what they do and trying to replicate it in your own paintings. For example, let's look at the 2 ocean paintings from earlier in this video. I made those 7 months apart, and I didn't really practice painting oceans or water that much in between those 2 paintings. I think I had 2 paintings that featured water in the last 7 months outside of those paintings, so I wasn't getting a lot of practice for them, and I also wasn't receiving much criticism or critiques on them. So what did I do differently? Well, I observed a lot more how artists that I liked were painting those things. I watched their speed paints and I looked at what colors they were using and what principles that they were applying. For example, the further out the water gets, the lighter in color it's going to be. The smaller the waves are going to look, the closer together the highlights are going to be, and the smaller that they're going to be, and the more blended in they're going to be. And the closer the water is, the darker it is, because it's not having the atmosphere in front of it to kind of fade it out. The larger the highlights are going to be, and the more vibrant they're going to be. They're going to be higher contrast the closer they are to the viewer. So, even though I wasn't practicing, I was learning how to apply the skills that I was seeing in other people. I was learning how the world worked in order to be able to apply it to my paintings. Now I can only wait to see how things are going to look when I start practicing those principles that I learned. If there's already been such great improvement, what'll it look like in a couple of years whenever I've learned even more and whenever I practice those skills? So my advice for you is to watch how the world works. Watch the artists that you like, watch tutorials, and don't necessarily even follow them, just watch what they're doing and try to figure out why they're doing it. If you think that shadows are always going to be black and you see that someone else is adding red or blue or whatever, ask yourself why, and why does that look different or better than what you think would have been the case. And lastly, give yourself time to learn. You're not going to just get so much better overnight. It's going to be a process, and if you really love it and you're really passionate about it, I really, really hope that you will be merciful and gracious with yourself as you learn, because everyone makes mistakes as they're doing things. Things aren't always going to turn out how you want them to be, but maybe someday you can look back and point out how you could do it better, and then actually do it better. For some people, maybe they have like a natural talent in things, and it's only going to take them 6 months to get to a level where they like their art. For some people, maybe they're really passionate, but they're not as naturally talented for whatever artwork they're making. So maybe it takes them 7 years before they like what they're making. But talent only gets you so far, and time really shows how much you're improving. I'd really recommend that as you are learning, you try to have fun. They say that time flies when you're having fun, and I think that also applies when you are trying to improve your skill levels. Sometimes the reason why you're not improving is just because you've locked yourself into a specific medium and you're just trying to improve with that instead of having fun. And sometimes branching out can lead to a whole new thing that maybe you would be better at. I know for me, I did a lot of mixed media art and I did not like it. And now that I've switched to mainly using gouache, I like my art so much better because it just works better with me. So I really encourage you to play around and have fun as you're learning, because I don't want y'all to get bogged down and then decide that you don't want to create things anymore because you're having such a hard time. That is all that I have for you today. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or want to see anything else or hear me talk about anything else. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you later.